We're gonna get started with a bang. Banger? All right, hey, welcome back to my favorite 24-ish images of 2024. So the first set of 8 images I've already done. So now we're on to the next batch, and we're gonna get started with a bang. Banger? That's what the kids call these, right? When you make a good photo, it's a banger. This one's a banger for me, might not be for you. But for me, this is a banger. I made a whole video about this. You saw me get like all almost weepy-eyed and stuff. But this was special to me. This is my favorite photography subject, a great gray owl. A nice, beautiful, clean shot with the Grand Teton right behind it. And I've been looking for that photo for many years and never had an opportunity. So this happened last year, last June. And boy, I'm just psyched about it. You can watch the video about it. I'll link to it if you want to see the whole thing. And actually, there were a bunch of nice photos from that session. So I was super psyched about it. But this has to be like one of my favorites just because it's such a difficult photo to get for me. But anyway, I'm psyched about it. Great gray owl, Grand Teton, f/14. I was trying to get enough definition in the Grand that you could tell is the Grand Teton, and that's all I care about. I don't want the Grand Teton to be sharp because then obviously it would compete for attention with the owl. So I like that it's soft, but it's sharp enough or defined enough that you know exactly what it is at a glance. So I couldn't have got it sharp, and if I had tried, I could have done a focus stack. Some people might like that look, but I think with sharp granite and a great gray owl of similar color and texture, it would kind of get lost in there and it would lose some of the effect. So I'm psyched with how it turned out. And anyway, it was f/14, 1/800th of a second, ISO 1600. So super psyched about this one. Great gray owl. All right, let's move on. We have now left the Tetons, and we are in Hallow Bay, Alaska, Katmai National Park, a place I have dreamt about going for many years, and I was finally fortunate enough to have the opportunity to go do it in a really special way. So anyway, super grateful for the opportunity to go to this magical place and photograph it and experience the bears. But I really liked this one. Obviously, you can get really close to the bears, and you're going to see that in a minute to get the full frame, you know, the close-ups of the bears and the portraits and all that. And, you know, when given an opportunity like a big, wide landscape, I'm always looking for those as well. And I think it's just kind of, I've trained my brain to look for the elk with the Tetons in the background, even the owl with the Tetons in the background. I'm looking for, you know, more wider angle animal small in the frame with an interesting environment. And that's what was happening here. We had this little gap between the two kind of rock outcroppings there. The tide was just right so that that gap was nice and clear. And the bear was moving right in that way. So I kind of set up and waited for that bear to stroll in between these two dark rock outcroppings. So we've got some balance with dark, dark, and then our subject pretty close to the middle of the frame. But, you know, kind of a bright, overcast day. The bright sky is reflecting into the water and making the water very bright. Again, it's like a simplified scene. There's some layers in there with the beach and some of the water and some of the wave action. The heat waves are pretty terrible out there, as, you know, especially out towards the rock outcroppings. But the detail here doesn't matter. This is not about detail. So some softness from heat waves is no big deal to me on this one. But I love the layering of the foreground out to the bear, out to the ocean, to the first set of rocks, and then out to the island in the distance. So wonderful frame here. I dig it a lot. This was f8, 1/1250th of a second, ISO 500. And that's where I like to live pretty much all day long when it's bright out, is at ISO 500. That's the sweet spot on the Z8 and the Z9 that I like to shoot. The dual gain sensor in those cameras loves ISO 500, so that's where I tend to be when I can. All right, so great photo. I love it. Big bear, big country up there in Alaska. And very, very blessed and grateful that I had that opportunity to go up there last year. And now, this was more of the close-up stuff, right? This is what you go to Alaska for. You can, the bears are super tolerant of humans, and you can get right in on these guys. Like, this was full frame at 560 millimeters. So this was with the 400-2.8, flip the teleconverter, and this happened. And this, this mother decided to nurse the 3 cubs right in front of us. We saw that a few different times, and that's like, you know, the bears are cool with you when mom's gonna nurse the cubs right in front of you, because they're super vulnerable at that point. And it's just a magic moment to have a bear let you watch them nurse. It's crazy. Anyway, they finished nursing and they sat right up, and the 3 cubs looked right at us. There were, what, 4 of us? 3 of us and a guide were sitting right there, and the cubs looked right at us. Mom kind of looked around. There was another bear wandering nearby. But when they looked right at us, the milk mustaches was like, it was too much, you know, like, ah, it's so cool. So anyway, this was my favorite frame. All 3 milk mustaches there, mama glancing off to the side, wonderful photo. I don't know what else to say about it. Just wonderful. Magic moment out there in Hallow Bay. Another one from that trip, actually the same day. This is the same mom. And we were just watching them graze for hours, and they eat grass like crazy, waiting for the salmon to start running. We were there before the salmon started, so a lot of grass monstering going on. And it was just hilarious watching this cub kind of imitate mom and getting big mouthfuls of grass, and then it like couldn't swallow all the grass, so it would tilt its head up to, like, gravity would help the grass go down its throat. And it was so fun to watch. And anyway, this was a frame from that situation, and I just thought it was super cute, imitating mama eating big mouthfuls of grass. And this one was, again, at 560 millimeters, f4, 12/50th of a second, ISO 500. All right. Another one, same group of bears. They really put on a show for us, and were super cool. So this is the same group. Again, they were kind of just grazing, doing their thing, eating and interacting. Another mama bear came in close and was approaching. And so this mom was keeping a close eye on that other bear, and baby was imitating mama again. So wonderful moment between mother and cub. Simple, clean, just clean background, very obvious subject, beautiful gesture. Anyway, that's what this is. So this one, I had stopped down to f8 on this one to get, they're very close. So this was at 560 millimeters again. And when you're that close to a subject, your depth of field gets really, really narrow. So I stopped down to f8 here, just kind of hoping that would be enough to keep both animals in the frame, get them both nice and sharp, and that was the case. So this was f8, 1/800th of a second, ISO 1000. And even at f8, look at the background. It's super blurry. And that's because the animals are so close. So you don't need like always to be at f2.8 to get a blurry background. You can get close, when you're close to your subject, your background is going to get really blurry even at f8, even at f11. So keep that in mind when your distance to subject is changing, your background is going to be changing, and your depth of field is going to be changing as well. But this is f8. If you're shooting with a 100 to 400 f5.6 and you think, oh, I can't get a blurry background because it's f5.6, you absolutely can. You just need to be close to your subject. Another one from that trip. This is a cute little cub. He was running around splashing in the creeks and playing with its siblings. And when he stood up to get a better look at his siblings who had run around behind us, the dripping paws, he looked like, you see some of the big males when they're fishing, you're standing up with the water dripping off their claws and they look all badass and like, ah. And this was like the cub version of that, a much cuter version of that frame that I imagine all of us have seen before. It's really cool when the big bear stands up in the water and they're dripping. This was the cuter, cuddlier version of that. So I love that frame as well. This one was 560 millimeters again, f4, 1/4000th of a second, and ISO 1000. And now we're back in the Tetons, and in fact, we're back very close to home. This is about a 3-wood away from my house. My neighbor has a teepee, and my daughter had been out in the hot tub the night before this, and she and a friend were out there, and she was like, hey, Papa, there's some weird noises out here. What's going on? And so I went out there and if you've ever heard a great horned owl or a great gray owl, a lot of different owls make different noises, but if you've ever heard a great horned owl baby screeching, it's a very weird sound, and you wouldn't guess that it's a baby owl, but it's like a real screechy, squawky, like baby pterodactyl sounding thing. And what time of year was this? This was September. So the chicks were all grown up, but Dad was still cruising around, teaching them how to hunt and etc. And so anyway, there were 3 owls cruising around in the neighborhood making weird noises. It freaked my daughter out. And then, of course, once I heard the noise, I knew exactly what it was. And I told them, oh, that's a baby owl. How cool. And then they ended up seeing that owl. But then the next night, we were coming home from something. I don't remember, but we pulled into the driveway at my house and got out of the car. And I could hear squawking from a baby owl again. And so I was like, oh, I'm going to see if I can find it, because it was just twilight. The sun had just gone down. It was getting dark, but it wasn't pitch dark yet. And so I looked in my neighbor's yard, and there was an owl sitting on a tree, and that was cool. But then I glanced over at their teepee, and one of the owls was sitting on the teepee. So at that point, I was like, panic. Oh my God, go, go, go. So I just grabbed out of my car as quickly as I could the Z8 with the that Tamron 35 to 150 lens, which is fantastic, and my tripod, which had a fluid head on it, a video fluid head, which is completely the wrong head for that lens and setup. So, but that was what I had right there, and I figured I had a very brief opportunity to make this photo. So I just grabbed all that stuff, and I had to go, run across, maybe 100 yards. It's not that far. To get set up where I wanted to be, and kind of had to finagle that head in the right way, and got set up before the owl flew away, and got a couple of frames in. And it's wonderful. It turned out great. I love this photo. It's pretty unique. There aren't many teepees left in this world. So the fact that my neighbor had one up and that it made a great photo subject was pretty darn special. I loved it. So this one was shot, as I said, with that the Z8, that Tamron 35 to 150, wide open. That was at 65 millimeters, f2.4, ISO 3200 and 5 seconds. So I shot a few frames and then if the owl moves its head during that 5 seconds, it's blurry. So this one, I had a nice, ultra sharp 5-second exposure there, and it turned out great. So super psyched with this. Like I'm an owl guy, so when I get a unique opportunity for an owl photo, I get really excited. So my wife and kids were standing there with me while I made this, so that was pretty neat as well. All right. We're still in September in the Tetons, and got this big, beautiful bull elk bugling up on a ridge with just kind of a white, bright background. Again, this is one where I had to go real positive on the exposure compensation, push that histogram, the white sky part of the histogram as far to the right as I can. And that'll bring out some of the detail in him, because if I shot that the way the camera wanted to shoot it, he would just be a silhouette there. It would make it far too dark. So I made this very bright. The sky is touching white, and that makes him look pretty darn good. So I liked the crop of this one. I shot some frames with his legs in the sagebrush and less open sky, and like that was nice. But honestly, the sagebrush was kind of cluttery and kind of yucky looking. So I went just with kind of a little different twist on a composition here. Shot it vertical with him in the middle of a bugle and lots of negative space up high. Converted it to black and white because it was a very monochrome scene anyways. It was before the sun came up, and just a kind of a white sky, so not much color to speak of, so I just made it black and white. This one was 560 millimeters again, f4, 1/160th of a second, ISO 1600. So when a bull elk bugles, they're moving, and then during that bugle, there's a few moments where they're basically completely still, not moving. And then, like their belly's moving, pumping air in and out, their nostrils are flaring. They could be moving a little bit, but I just shot a bunch of frames here throughout the bugle, knowing that some of them there wouldn't be any movement even at 160th of a second. I wanted a super clean, sharp, nice photo here, and that's what I ended up with. So I very much love this photo. Actually, I'd love to print this one big and hang it in my house, but I'm running out of wall space. All right, I already told you the settings on that, didn't I? Anyway, love that photo. Beautiful, simple, clean, iconic. On to another elk. This one's in October, early morning, right as the sun is cresting the horizon. This big bull was breathing heavily as he was chasing the ladies around and picking up the light, that rim light. I looked for a dark background there, so the sun's just off to the left there behind, so it's a back left backlight. And so all that fog's picking it up, his fur, his antlers are picking it up, but the trees in the background are still in the shade. So that's why I get that super dark background. And that is what makes the rim light happen around his antlers and the fog light up like a firecracker. It's just spectacular when you get that kind of light, and it makes my heart go all aflutter, and it did on this scene. It was fantastic. I made a bunch of great photos here. I was hard picking which one from this session that I wanted to present as a top 24. I chose this one. That fog, it just, and the way the antlers stand out against that background is really special. So this was f2.8, ISO 1600, 1/8000th of a second. So those settings are wrong. Like I should have been at ISO 500 there. I still would have had plenty fast shutter speed, but I had been shooting at those settings, and I needed that ISO 1600 because it was dark. And then that sun came up, and then it was like, oh my, bang, look at that, bang. And it was like, shoot, 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 shoot. I don't want to mess with the settings. Like I know ISO 1600, it's got more noise than ISO 500. So in a perfect world, I'd be at 500, but ISO 1600, it's still wonderful. And I can print this thing 8 feet wide and it'll still look great. So I chose to just focus on the moment, try and make the best photos I could without worrying about the settings. And I thought about it. I was like, it's good enough. Go, 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 go. Instead of messing with it and missing a cool shot because I'm fiddling with settings. So those settings aren't ideal, but they worked. And I was able to make the photos despite kind of missing the settings. Okay, where are we? I went a little too far. So I'm going to end this session here, and then I'll do one more little session in a minute. What can I plug this time? I don't know. How about buy my book? If you haven't bought Phantom of the North, my book on great gray owls that I collaborated with Catherine Gura on, it's a wonderful book full of photos and great information about the great gray owl. I'll put a link to that in the description as well, and appreciate it. I'll be back in the next session with the final images of my favorites of 2024. Thanks for watching.